Welcome back, and I'm glad to be back, everybody, to another episode of the Who's Business Show. Haven't really been feeling too well. You might be able to hear my voice, so I apologize for that. But, the show must go on. So, today, the topic of this discussion is going to be about getting paid. And so, I want to start by asking you guys this question. Ever had somebody pay you or not pay you what they owe you? Or like, did someone just not like pay you on time, so it just messes up like everything you got going on? Well, that's been a reoccurring theme of my life, and it's starting to follow me into my entrepreneurship journey. So we got to nip that in the bud. But I got time today, so I wanted to talk about it because yeah, I just feel like it needed to be addressed. So obviously, I'm not going to use any names, but in the span of 1 week, I had 3 clients not pay me. I was completely thrown off. I was disheveled. I was a mess. I was flabbergasted. Like whatever one of those words you want to use best to describe it. I was just like, oh, okay. Like I'm constantly checking the account. Like I don't see this deposit. I don't see this other one, and I don't see this other one. So, we're gonna talk about all three because all three, like, they all have their own story. So, sort of the first one. So the first guy, he ghosted me and blocked me, and I was very, very confused. So he was a referral, and we love a referral client, but the thing is with referrals, like you don't meet them first, and you don't get a chance to vet them out. So you got to kind of like figure them out as the engagement goes. So he signed up in like December, like a couple weeks before Christmas. And, the only problem that I had with this guy is that he was looking for like guarantees. He looked for a bunch of guarantees. And, as someone in my space, if you guys don't know yet, I work in the credit industry. We're actually not allowed to make guarantees. So whether it be guarantees of, oh, you'll get X amount of points to your credit score, or, oh, I'll be able to remove X amount of items, or I can definitely do that. Like, we're not really supposed to make guarantees. So I guess he wants to buy a house. Obviously, that's what most people want to do. Why most people start to care about their credit because they want to buy a house or a car. So he was like, hey, if I give you all my info and all this, can you guarantee that you'll get me into a home? And I was like, I mean, I can't guarantee that. No, not at all. But what I can guarantee is that I can use every law and tactic that I have and know to dispute whatever negative items you have. So like, okay, all right, fine. So, you know, we wait 30 days. That's for his first payment. And it comes around and he didn't pay me. So I saw that he didn't pay me, and like I wasn't gonna harass him because like that's the kind of person I'm trying to be as an entrepreneur. Like I don't want to harass people for payment because like you sign a contract, like everything's written out for you. So like you have the information, when everything's due, like where it holds. So get to it. So, like a week and a half goes by, and then he calls me. I was like, oh, hey, like, what's going on? He was like, hey, I know I'm late, but, I just got into an apartment and, like, money's kind of tight now. I was like, oh, all right, like, I get it. Like, life happens. Congrats on the new apartment. So he's like, hey, like, can I pay you double? And I'm like, yeah, yeah, that's fine. I'll send you an email. So we just have this on record that, like, you're agreeing to pay me double. And I'll also send you like a reminder text as well. He was like, yeah, sounds good. So I sent him that email like later on that day, and I think a week before the next payment was due, I sent him a text like, hey, just want to remind you. So, and then I sent them one more text the day before, which to me, that seems like a lot anyway. But like, like with business and money, like, I make sure you're getting paid. So, um, the text I sent them the night before, it went green because and I'm like, oh, okay. Like sometimes that happens. Like maybe like someone's phone was like dead at the time, so I was like, whatever. I didn't think nothing of it. Like, all right, like either way, I sent them the email, and then the day of the next day, I like sent them just, hey, just want to remind you that today's due, and it didn't deliver, and I'm like, oh, hmm, okay. So, and then I sent like another email like a couple of days later, and just no response. So I was like, all right, so just to give y'all numbers, like, so that was about $300 that I had lost. And I was like, Okay. And don't get me wrong, like I'm not sitting here trying to say like $300 is a lot of money. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is my business has expenses, and so every payment counts. So to lose two payments totaling up to $300, like that that was a big hit to my business. So I was like, all right, like, well, like it is what it is. Like that's fine. I haven't heard from him, so I guess we're just not gonna work together. So he ghosted me and blocked me. That was the first one. The second one is this guy. He's an older gentleman and doesn't really speak much English. So like I have to talk with someone else to talk to him. And like I hate going through that. I don't want to have a middleman. Like it makes me regret like not paying attention more to my language classes in school. But yeah, so he had called me, right? Because we signed up everything, signed up around the same time as the last guy, and he called me like a couple of days before, and he was like, "Oh," like a couple of days before like the bill was due. He was like, "Oh, like I pay you today," and I was like, "No, no, 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 no. It's." But I told him like, "Oh no, it's due like in a couple of days." He's like, "All right." He was like, "Great." So then I didn't get paid on that day. And in my head, I'm like, you literally just called me a couple of days ago. And like I ended up talking to the person I have to talk, like go through to talk to him so like it can get translated. And they were like, oh, like you should just charge his account. And I was like, yeah, I could do that because with this guy, so he wanted to be on auto pay. And I was like, yeah, like I could do that, but you know, I know what that's like to like not have money in your account and like a company's trying to like pull the money and then like you're getting return fees and then it ends up getting like overdrawn. So I was like, I'm not gonna do that. So then I ended up talking to him that day, and he's like, oh, I have the money next week. I was like, all right. Next week came, nothing happened, no money. I was like, all right. And then I talked to that person again, and they were like, oh, I'm gonna have him come in. And then like he came in, and this so now it's like basically like 2 weeks just to get this payment. And I told him like, hey, listen, like like I'll just change the payment date. Like this will be the date. All right, you understand? He's like, oh yeah, 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 okay. And it's like the thing is, it's like, and the person told me like, oh, he didn't have any money in his account because like they work at a bank. And I'm like, this guy has a good job. Why is well, like I said, like in my head, I didn't say it there. I said in my head, I'm like, why is there no money? But then again, it's like that. That's kind of irrelevant because it's like whatever. Like we all have lives. It's just the point of like you wanted this service and I gave you a contract and like that person also went over the contract with you. So it's like, like but hey, he's not auto pay. So I mean I guess next time I will just, you know, try and pull the money. If it's not there, then it's not there. It's just I didn't want to be the person to, like kind of like mess up his account because I know what that's like. But it's just if you're gonna sign up for something, just be ready for it. And then last but not least, this customer, this one was interesting. And I kind of put myself in this position, but let me explain. Let me explain. So with this last client, right? So I've been working with them for a little while, like not too long, but like a little while. And I guess they had expectations that we weren't really like, they weren't really like put out there. But in the beginning, when we signed the contract, I let them know like, hey, like expect to be in this for like at least 6 to 12 months because like I can't tell you oh by this day like stuff is gonna be removed. Like that's another thing. Like I can't do that because everyone's credit reports are different. Like if I get something removed for somebody in 30 days, I can't tell you the same thing because it might take you 4 months. Like everyone's different. So it was like January. They were asking about something and I was like, oh yeah, no, like I haven't been able to do that yet. And they're like, oh, it's just we had this expectation. And I told them like, yeah, like I understand, and I'm sorry that that expectation wasn't met, but like I explained in the beginning. So what I told them, and here's where it's kind of like my fault. I said, okay, so and it's because too like they were late. hadn't paid me yet. So then I told them, I was like, okay, well, like as a courtesy to you, like if you want, like this can be your last payment, and I would just continue working on it. So like from that moment on, they were like, oh no, they're like, oh no, it's fine. Like we appreciate your work that you're doing all this and that, and they're like, no, like we appreciate everything, and we're thankful. And I was like, all right, yeah, okay, like yeah, no problem. So they pay me like after that exchange, which is cool. And I'm like, all right. And so like I keep going through the dispute flow for that client. So then the next month comes, February, and they didn't pay me again. It had been like 2 weeks late. So I was like, okay. So I asked them, I was like, hey, like your payment is late. So it's been like 2 weeks. And again, like I said in the beginning, like I don't want to be this guy to like harass people. But so then they sent me a screenshot. I was like, what's that? And like I pressed it, and it was of our conversation from the month prior, where I said like, oh, like this can be like your, like as a courtesy to you, like this could be your last payment and all this and that exchange. And they had told me like, oh, like the payments like are done, like we're not paying anymore. And I was confused, but then when I saw the screenshot, I'm like, oh, that's why. But the thing is, so I guess you might be saying like, oh, well, like you can't really be mad because you said that to them, but the reason why I was kind of mad about it was because it wasn't clear and direct. It wasn't like a, oh, okay, like I think that sounds good. Like if this could be the last payment, that would be good for us. Like something like super direct like that. Because again, like we're all adults here. Like we can just say what we want. Because like I wouldn't have told them no. I wouldn't have cried about it because again, I'm the one that said it to them. Like I'll do that, but they weren't clear and direct about it. So then, like next month, when I'm expecting the payment and I get that screenshot, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, like that was we weren't at an understanding, but I guess now we are. And like I said, like because this person too is like also like they're like a friend. So like, and I said like to preserve like the friendship, like I'll respect that. And I think I did say like it just wasn't clear, so we weren't on the same page. But the reason why is like, so they like fulfilled most of the obligation of the contract. Like I think they have like a few more months, but it's like I'm going to lose all that money now, and it's like that same person who like had just started a small business. So most of us that have businesses, because when you start out, they're small. We're not all Walmart and Apple, at least not yet. You know, every payment from your clients counts. Like you can't really, in the beginning, you can't really afford to like not be getting paid for the work that you're doing. And so like to like preserve like the friendship, like I just said, okay, like that's fine. But like I had also said too, like, oh, like in the contract, like it said expect at least 6 to 12 months. And that's why like like it's the whole point of the contract because everything is outlined. And it's like, like some other person probably would have been like, oh, like, like, nah, we have a contract. Like, if it's really like that, like, we're just gonna have to go to court because you signed this contract. And like, I wasn't gonna be that person because not even just because like the court process, but just because like, all right, at the end of the day, I did say like this can be the last one. It's just how it was approached, how like they went about it. But that leads me into the next part of what I learned. So what I learned is have some sort of contingency plan like in place in your contracts. That's how you can tell that like I'm very new to business because you would think like, oh, like you didn't have that in there. Like no, honestly I didn't. Like the contract I had like that I'm using, I honestly didn't have like, oh, like what are the terms and conditions about canceling or not paying in a timely manner like when you're supposed to pay. Like honestly I didn't have that. And I think it's just because I was so eager to start the business that that's something that I didn't like do, but like, you know, like through these three experiences, it's like okay, like we have that sort of thing now. And then next, like you want to enforce parts of the contract and make sure everything's understood. So like moving forward, like ever since then, because I've signed about three people like since that, and like I highlight parts of the contract that like I want you to pay attention to. Like I'm not trying to like like just like I'm not trying to be like a sneaky person because like a lot of times with contracts like there's things in there like fine print like nah like the print on my contract is readable. You don't need glasses or a magnifying glass. Like I'm not trying to get over on you, and I highlight the parts that I want you to see because as people like we don't read stuff. We just want to start doing stuff. So I'd be like, hey, like, like make sure you read the contract. If you have questions, please ask me before you sign it and send it back to me. Because if you have questions, like, let's talk about it. I don't want there to be any misunderstanding from either side. And then also from that, from changing of the contract too, it also led me to think like I might need to change like my pricing, like the way I price people. Cause like in all three of these instances, like these are people that were paying every month. And so it's like, like getting paid every month is cool because you have money coming in. But it's like when you get into these situations, it's like, oh, like, damn, like I needed that monthly payment. Now I don't have it. Whereas if I was having people pay a one time payment, then it's like, okay, I'm getting paid for all the work that's expected of me. But what comes along with that is that people are like, oh, like I paid you all this money, like why hasn't my credit changed? And it'd be like, well, it's only been 2 weeks. So a lot of people want things very, very fast, but like things take time. So that's kind of why like I don't move to like the one payment because I don't want to have those type of interactions with people. I'd rather say, hey, like every month, pay me this, and it also makes it cheaper for people. But it's kind of just some things you have to think about. But that was just my little rant, but I hope you learned something from it, from my experiences. But yeah, so thank you for tuning in today, and I'll see you on the next episode. Have a good one.